You're driving home from work. It's late. You see the lights in your rearview mirror. Heart starts racing. You pull over. Officer walks up. You hand over your license and registration. Everything seems routine. Then the officer leans in and asks, "You mind if I take a quick look inside your car?" Most people freeze right here. And most people say the wrong thing. Because here's what nobody tells you. The words you say in the next 3 seconds can make the difference between driving home and going to jail. Today, I'm going to give you the 3 exact words that protect you. And I'm going to explain the Supreme Court cases behind them in plain English. I'm an international lawyer with over 15 years of courtroom experience. Let's get into it. First, you need to understand something most Americans don't realize. In America, your car has fewer protections than your home. The Fourth Amendment says you're protected against unreasonable searches and seizures. But here's where it gets tricky. In 1925, the Supreme Court decided a case called Carroll versus United States. Federal agents pulled over a man named George Carroll. They suspected he was transporting illegal liquor during Prohibition. They searched his car. No warrant. Found 68 bottles of whiskey. Carroll's lawyer argued, "Warrantless search, Fourth Amendment violation." The Supreme Court disagreed. They created what's now called the automobile exception. The logic was simple. Cars move. If police had to wait for a warrant, the evidence could literally drive away. So the court ruled, if an officer has probable cause, they can search your vehicle without a warrant. Almost 100 years later, this is still the law. So when an officer asks to search your car, they often don't have probable cause yet. They're asking because you might just give them consent. Here's another case you need to know. Schneckloth versus Bustamonte, 1973. Police pulled over a car with 6 men inside. One of them gave the officer permission to search the trunk. Inside that trunk, police found stolen checks. At trial, the lawyers argued, he didn't know he could refuse. Nobody told him he had the right to say no. The consent wasn't valid because it wasn't informed. The Supreme Court disagreed. They ruled, the Constitution does not require police to tell you that you can refuse a search. They don't have to read you any rights before asking for consent. If you say yes, even if you didn't know you could say no, that consent is legally valid. Think about that. The officer doesn't have to tell you about your right to refuse. They can just ask. And if you say yes, everything they find is admissible in court. This is why what you say in that moment is everything. So here it is, the 3 words. When an officer asks, "Can I search your car?" you say, "I do not consent." 3 words, calm, clear, complete. I do not consent. That's it. Nothing else needed. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to argue about your rights. You don't need to cite Supreme Court cases at the side of the road. Just say those 3 words, calmly and respectfully. Now here's what a lot of people ask me, but won't that make me look guilty? Let me answer that directly. The Supreme Court has addressed this too. Refusing consent cannot be used as probable cause to search your vehicle. Your silence and your refusal are your constitutional rights. Exercising a right is not evidence of a crime. If the officer had probable cause, they wouldn't be asking, they'd be searching. Let me walk you through what actually happens if you say yes. Scenario 1. You think your car is clean, nothing illegal. So you say, sure, go ahead. The officer searches your car, but in the console between the seats, they find a knife you forgot about. You use it for work. You didn't think it was a weapon. Under some state laws, that knife might be over the legal limit. Now you're facing a weapons charge because you consented. Scenario 2. You're driving your friend's car, or your cousin borrowed it last week. You give consent. Police find something. You say, that's not mine. Doesn't matter. You're the driver. You're the one in handcuffs. Scenario 3. The officer finds nothing illegal, but the search takes 20 minutes. Your work laptop gets wet. Your groceries are ruined, and you have no recourse because you said yes. I've seen all 3 of these scenarios. Real cases, real people, real consequences. Before I continue, if you're finding this useful, hit that like button and subscribe. I decode complex laws in plain English every week. Now, important question. What if you say, I do not consent, and the officer searches your car anyway? This happens. More often than you'd think. Here's what you do. First, do not physically resist. Do not block the officer. Do not grab their arm. That turns a search into a resisting arrest charge. Instead, you say these words, I am complying under protest. I do not consent to any searches. Say it clearly. Say it once. Then let them search. Write down everything afterward. Officer's name, badge number, patrol car number, time, location. This is critical because later in court, your lawyer will argue the search was unconstitutional. It's called the exclusionary rule. Here's another tool you need. 4 words. Am I free to leave? Here's why this matters. During a traffic stop, police can detain you for a reasonable amount of time. In Rodriguez versus United States 2015, the Supreme Court clarified, a traffic stop can last no longer than necessary to complete the mission of the stop. checking your license, registration, insurance, and writing any citation. Once that's done, the officer cannot extend the stop to wait for a drug dog or to ask additional questions unless they have independent, reasonable suspicion of a separate crime. So after the officer finishes with your documents and they start asking unrelated questions, where are you coming from? What's in the trunk? You can ask, am I free to leave? If the officer says yes, you leave, calmly, safely. If the officer says no, then you've just established on body camera that you are now being detained. And now the officer needs reasonable suspicion. That's a higher bar. Let me give you a simple mental flow chart. Save this, screenshot it, practice it in the mirror. Step 1. Officer asks to search your car. Step 2. You say, I do not consent. Step 3. If the officer searches anyway, I am complying under protest. I do not consent to any searches. Step 4. If the officer starts asking unrelated questions after your stop should be over, am I free to leave? 3 phrases. That's your entire toolkit. I do not consent. I am complying under protest. Am I free to leave? That's it. That's the system. Practice these until they're automatic, because when you're nervous, you default to being polite and cooperative, and that's exactly what police count on when they ask for consent. Here's why most people fail at this. It's not that they don't know their rights. It's not that they're guilty. It's fear. When an armed officer in uniform is standing over you, the power dynamic is overwhelming. Everything in your brain tells you, comply, be agreeable, don't create problems. Saying, I do not consent feels confrontational. But I want to reframe this. Saying I do not consent is not confrontational. It's the exercise of a constitutional right that millions of Americans fought and died to protect. The Fourth Amendment exists precisely for this moment. When you say, I do not consent, you're not being difficult, you're being American. Say it calmly, say it respectfully. Officer, I do not consent. No attitude, no raised voice, no argument. And most officers, when you say this calmly, will not push further. They know the law. Remember, I do not consent. I am complying under protest. Am I free to leave? 3 phrases that can save your freedom. This channel is about decoding complex laws into plain English. I'm an international lawyer with 15 years of experience. If this video helped you, hit that like button. Subscribe to The Law Decoded. Share this with someone who drives, your spouse, your teenager who just got their license. Comment below. What situation do you want me to break down next? This is not legal advice. For informational purposes only. I'll see you in the next one.